Welcome to Compelling Topics, the only channel dedicated to the perspective of leading researchers from the Italian independent scene. Let's turn your minds on. In this video, we explore one of the most discussed and controversial articles written by Paolo Franceschetti on the case of the Monster of Florence. Published years before many of today's critical re-evaluations of the case became widely known, this article marked, for many readers, the beginning of serious doubts about the official narrative. In December 2007, Paolo Franceschetti published an article on his blog Pedali di Lodo entitled The Monster of Florence, the Octopus Reaching into the State. Over time, it became one of the most cited and debated texts among those who questioned the official version of the Monster of Florence case. Rather than focusing on procedural details or naming potential perpetrators, Franceschetti concentrates on the irregularities, misdirections, and cover-ups that characterize the entire investigative process, starting from a series of anomalies. Missing files, parallel investigations kept hidden, witnesses who died under suspicious circumstances. He proposes a radically different interpretation of the case. According to this view, the Monster of Florence is not simply an isolated serial killer, but a phenomenon that reveals something deeper about the relationship between power, institutions, and information. The central metaphor of the article is that of the octopus, a network of collusion and influence that extends its tentacles into the fabric of the state and its institutions, preventing any truly free and transparent investigation. Franceschetti argues that these systemic features, far beyond human error or simple disorganization, lead many to wonder whether the case involved protected actors, deliberate misdirection, and high-level cover-ups. For many researchers and enthusiasts of unsolved crimes and dark history, this article represented a turning point. It was one of the first widely circulated texts to question not only who the monster was, but the very nature of the investigation itself and the way truth was constructed and presented over time. Its impact helped fuel debates, alternative research, and the idea that the Monster of Florence is not merely a closed judicial case, but a mystery far deeper than the identification of a single culprit. We have translated the entire article from Italian into English, preserving all details, names, dates, and events. I decided to write this article after the case of the expert involved in the Moby Prince affair, who miraculously escaped death. A few days ago, the man was narcotized by 4 hooded individuals and then placed in a car that was set on fire. He survived by a hair's breadth, awakening just in time from the narcotic. This incident is identical to many others that happened to witnesses of important trials in Italy's history. Yet, not everyone knows that identical incidents also happened to many witnesses in the Monster of Florence case. Much has been written about the Monster of Florence case, and many doubts remain. Was Pacciani really guilty? Were there really masterminds commissioning the murders? Few have instead focused on a particular aspect of this case: misdirections, excellent cover-ups, and suspicious deaths. For years, the Monster case was considered a mystery in which the goal was simply to find the serial killer. In reality, the case can be viewed from a completely different perspective, one typical of all Italian state massacres: the persistent concealment of evidence to prevent the truth from emerging, facilitated by the involvement of Freemasonry and the secret services, the inefficiency of state apparatus in addressing these situations, and cultural unpreparedness when facing matters that go beyond ordinary murder or bank robbery, touching on esoteric themes. Let us therefore retrace the steps of the case before drawing our conclusions. It should be noted that this article is not intended to propose new leads. We do not aim to discuss whether Pacciani was guilty or not, whether the monster was a single individual or an organized group, or whether the Rosa Rosa or other satanic sects were involved. We want to analyze the matter from a purely legal perspective, highlighting certain facts that have not been sufficiently addressed until now. From 1968 to 1985, 8 young couples were murdered in the countryside around Florence. In 4 of these double murders, body parts were removed, particularly breasts and pubic regions. Remember the pubic region, as it will be referenced later. The real hunt for the monster began after the 3rd murder, when it became clear that the same hand was behind them. After judicial errors and various developments, Pietro Pacciani was indicted in 1994. It appeared clear that Pacciani was guilty, or at least heavily involved in these murders. The evidence was severe, precise, and consistent. In particular, a bullet casing found in his garden, unmistakably from the monster's pistol, a .22 caliber Beretta, incriminated him. The firing pin from the monster's gun, sent to investigators wrapped in a piece of cloth identical to that later found in Pacciani's house. And, most importantly, a soap dish and a sketchpad of German brand, recognized as belonging to the German couple killed by the monster. Additionally, a note found in his home read "couple" with a license plate corresponding to that of a murdered couple. Telephone and environmental wiretaps completed the picture, showing that Pacciani lied, concealing many important details from investigators. Yet the trial was full of inconsistencies. Too many things did not add up. The motive was unclear, although violent and having previously killed in ways that sometimes resembled some of the crimes. Pacciani did not fit the profile of a serial killer. Certain details also did not align. For example, forensic reports determined that the shooter had to be at least 1.80 meters tall, while Pacciani was significantly shorter. Furthermore, during the trial, some of his friends blatantly lied to protect him, almost appearing to collude. Why were they lying? In the first instance, Pacciani was convicted. In the second instance, he was acquitted. The prosecutorial case was, in fact, rather weak. However, the day before the second instance verdict, the Florence prosecutor's office found 4 new witnesses who implicated Pacciani and explained some inconsistencies. 2 of these witnesses were Pacciani's accomplices, who, confessing their own involvement, revealed that the murders were actually committed by a group. However, the Florence Court of Appeal chose not to hear these witnesses and acquitted Pacciani. The verdict was later annulled by the Court of Cassation, but in the meantime, Pacciani died under unclear circumstances. Apparently, he suffered a heart attack, but Gittari, the commissioner following the investigation for the Florence prosecutor's office, suspected murder. In 2002, the monster investigation reopened, but in Perugia. To understand how and why it reopened, we must take a step back. On October 13, 1985, the body of a young doctor from Perugia, Francesco Narducci, was found in Lake Trasimeno. The case was archived as a suicide, although his wife did not believe this version, and many others did not either. From the start, some newspapers speculated about Narducci's involvement in the Florence events. In 2002, the Perugia prosecutor's office, intercepting some phone calls by chance, suspected that the Perugian doctor had been murdered and had the body exhumed. The exhumed body had different clothing than what it had worn in 1985. Numerous other serious clues, along with witness testimonies from the day of the original discovery, led investigators to believe that the body initially recovered was not Narducci, and that the real Narducci's remains were only later placed correctly. Investigating the case, Perugia PM Magnini discovered that on the day of the body's discovery, the burial procedures were irregular. Several authorities, all members of Freemasonry, were present on the dock, as were Narducci and his father. It emerged that Narducci was probably involved in the Monster of Florence murders, and may have even personally removed body parts on some occasions. Investigations suggested the existence of multiple masterminds behind the murders who commissioned the killings and possibly used the body parts for satanic rituals. In particular, Lottie confessed that the murders were being paid for by a doctor. Financial investigations into Pacciani revealed hundreds of millions in assets of completely unexplained origin. Four individuals were officially notified: the pharmacist of San Casciano Calamandrii, a doctor, and a lawyer, who were believed to be the masterminds behind the monster murders. Meanwhile, charges for obstruction of justice, hiding of corpses, and other minor offenses, likely to be eventually statute barred, were brought against Ugo Narducci's father, Francesco's brothers, Perugia Police Chief Francesco Trio, Carabinieri Colonel Di Carlo, Inspector Napoleoni, lawyer Fabio Dean, and many others. Almost all were members of the Bellucci Masonic Lodge in Perugia, and some, including Narducci's father, were linked to P2. Narducci himself and Police Chief Trio were members of P2, while lawyer Fabio Dean was the son of one of Gelli's lawyers. Once again, the secret services were involved, as were their misdirections and standard obstructive measures. Initially, the investigation ran smoothly up to Pacciani's appeal trial, except for the usual challenges of identifying the culprits. However, as soon as the trail of the masterminds emerged, chaos ensued. Investigators were discredited, ridiculed, and belittled. Their errors were constantly highlighted, portraying the Florence prosecutor's office as determined to frame innocence. Giuttari was painted as seeking publicity, a lunatic who believed in a crazy satanic theory. Whenever he neared the truth, he was isolated or offered a promotion to remove him from the investigation. Media outlets repeatedly published scoops aimed at undermining years of work by the Florence and Perugia prosecutors' offices. Journalists who suggested connections between Freemasonry, the monster murders, and satanic sects were sued, although the lawsuits were later withdrawn. Parallel and unofficial investigations were conducted without informing the main investigators. PM Magnini discovered that after the last monster murder, the Perugia police had investigated Narducci and the monster in September 1985, but the Florence prosecutor's office was not informed. Similarly, Carabinieri conducted parallel investigations without notifying prosecutors. Some revealed that years earlier, they had raided Narducci's Florence apartment to recover body parts, but had been preempted. Again, the Florence prosecutors were unaware. These parallel investigations were coordinated by Inspector Napoleoni, allegedly without his superior Speroni knowing. Narducci's file had existed for some time, but was lost, later found missing various parts. Many items seized during investigations mysteriously disappeared, including the famous pyramid-shaped stone found at one crime scene. According to Giuttari, even Florence Chief Prosecutor Nanucci, opposed to investigating the masterminds, warned journalist Mario Spizzi of an impending inquiry. The Genoa prosecutor's office ultimately archived Nanucci's case. Finally, the deviated secret services performed their usual misdirections. Sista had prepared a dossier since the third murder, hypothesizing that the murders were not committed by a single serial killer but by a satanic sect acting as a group, as evidenced by certain crime scene details. This 1980 dossier, signed by Sista consultant Francesco Bruno, was never delivered to Florence investigators. 3 Sista studies, reconstructing the multiple mastermind and Black Mass trail, mysteriously went missing. Later, Bruno would claim publicly that he believed the serial killer was an isolated monster still at large. There were also the typical suspicious death seen in major Italian judicial cases, a true massacre within the massacre. The Perugian doctor, Francesco Narducci, drowned in Lake Trasimeno. Pacciani died under unclear circumstances. A homicide file was opened. Elisabetta Saibiani, a 20-year-old who worked at the hotel where Narducci and his Masonic lodge met, revealed names of some masterminds and Rosa Rosa's involvement. She was found stabbed, including a blow to the pubic region, yet the case was ruled a suicide. Her psychologist, Maurizio Antonello, was later found hanged. Renato Malatesta, husband of Antonetta Sperduto, Pacciani's lover, was found hanged with feet on the ground, a recurring kneeling suicide pattern in Italy. Francesco Vinci and Angelo Vargiu, suspected Pacciani associates, were found burned in cars. Anna Milva Mattei, also burned in a car. Claudio Petacci died in a motorcycle accident without apparent cause. Milva Malatesta and her son Mirko, also burned in a car, mirroring the attempted Moby Prince expert murder. Rolf Reinecke, witness to a couple murdered by the monster, died of a heart attack in 1983. Domenico, a fruit vendor from Prato, disappeared in 1994, considered a case of Lupera bianca. Luciano Petrini, a computer consultant, approached witness Gabriella Pasquale Carlizzi in 1996, revealing knowledge of the monster. On May 9th, he was murdered in his bathroom, beaten with a towel rack sharpened by removing its gasket. No break-in signs were present. Authorities concluded a gay murder, ignoring the striking similarity with the Ustica case. Many others, including 3 prostitutes, victims of murder or suicide. The truth about the Monster of Florence will likely never be known. The names of the masterminds, at least not all, will remain unknown. Yet many aspects of this case are clear to those who read the facts and documents carefully. My goal is not to propose theories or refute others. I am not concerned with whether Pacciani was the monster or framed, or whether Narducci was involved. The key point is the scale of complicity. For crimes of such severity, excellent cover-ups exist, and the justice system is paralyzed. Investigators are unprepared when cases touch esotericism and deviated secret services. The Monster of Florence case should concern everyone. 18 official victims, who could have been friends, partners, or ourselves. Dozens of witnesses brutally murdered. Hundreds of families unknowingly affected. The real monster is not only the killer, but also those who covered up the truth, linked to deviated Freemasonry and parts of the state. The Monster of Florence is merely one tentacle of this octopus. In the next episode of The Night Side, we will move closer to the case itself. We will leave theory behind and enter the terrain of facts, investigations, and contradictions.